These are the solutions to paper 4 in the 8-week revision programme, which is the 13th of June 2012 paper 2 foundation tier. Question 1. Theo orders some clothes from an online catalogue. He buys 4 pairs of jeans, 5 shirts, 8 packs of socks and 2 pairs of trainers. We have to complete the table to show his bill for these items. The first calculation you need to do is to find the total cost of the 5 shirts. And we type into our calculators 5 times £7.62, which is £38.10. Then we have to find the cost of the socks, so we type in 8 times £3.75, which is £30 exactly. And then for 2 pairs of trainers, we type in 2 times £25.99, and that comes to £51.98. To find the total, you need to add all 4 amounts together, including the one they've given you in the question, and that comes to £169.40. To find the 5% discount for part B, we have to use the calculator method for finding 5%, which is to convert the 5% into a decimal by dividing by 100, and that gives you 0.05. And then you multiply that by £169.40, your total from part A. The calculator will then give you the answer £8.47. For question 2, we have to find a metric unit to best measure the length of a hockey pitch. Remember, this is a metric unit, not imperial, so the unit you would choose would be metres. For the capacity of a fuel tank of a car, which is the amount of liquid it holds, that would be litres. For the distance from Paris to Rome, that would be kilometres. And for the weight of a large dog, that would be kilograms. For question 3, we have to estimate the area of the above shape by counting the squares in the centimetre grid. We start by counting the whole and nearly whole squares, totalling those up, marking the squares as we go along and as we count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and so on. Then you count the parts of squares, piecing them together to make whole squares as you go along. So for example, that piece and that piece would make approximately 1 square. That piece and that piece would make approximately a second square, and so on. And when you've counted them all up, it should come to a total between 53 and 61 centimetres squared. So for example, my final answer could be 56 centimetres squared. For part B, we have to complete the figure so that it is symmetrical about the line PQ. So PQ is your mirror line. You can use tracing paper to help you with this. So using the tracing paper, you draw the shape on the tracing paper and you draw on the mirror line. Then you flip over the tracing paper and line up the mirror line where it was before. That then will show you where your new shape needs to go, and you draw it in that new position. Start with the straight lines and then draw the curve in at the end. So my first straight line needs to go here. And then at this end, I've got another straight line that needs to go here. I've got another diagonal line that goes diagonally across 3 squares here. So using my tracing paper to help me again, it'll go here. And then finally I draw in the curve, joining the ends of these lines together. For question 4, we have to write down the special name of each of the following figures. The first figure is a cylinder. The second has got 5 sides, so that will be a pentagon. And the last is a 3D shape with a triangle at the front, so that will be a triangular prism. For part B, we have to write down the special name of the straight line shown in each of the following diagrams. The first line goes from the centre to the edge of the circle, so that will be the radius. The second is inside the circle and joins 2 points on the circumference, that will be the chord. And finally, the line on the outside of the circle touching one point on the circumference is called the tangent. For part C, we have to draw on all the lines of symmetry in the following patterns. The first shape in part 1 has 2 lines of symmetry, each of them going diagonally through the shape. These are your mirror lines, and once you've drawn those on, double check that you've got the same shape on either side of the mirror line. The second mirror line then goes diagonally the other way, and once again, when we check, we've got exactly the same shape on either side of the mirror line. For part 2, that's only got one line of symmetry straight down the middle vertically. For question 5, we have to draw a circle around the fractions that are equal to 0.4. Here you have to start by converting the 0.4 into a fraction and simplify it as far as you can. So 0.4 as a fraction would be 4/10, because the 4 is in the tenths place value in this decimal. We can cancel that down by dividing the top and the bottom by 2, which would cancel down to 2/5. Then cancel down every one of these fractions if you can, and whichever one of them equal 2/5 when you cancel it, those are the ones that you need to circle. So for 10/25, we can cancel that down by dividing by 5, because that's the biggest number that goes into the top and the bottom of the fraction. 10 divided by 5 is 2, and 25 divided by 5 is 5. 1/4 we can't cancel down. 4/15 we can't cancel down because there's no number we can divide the top and the bottom of the fractions by. 4/10, like this one, we can cancel down by dividing by 2, and that gives you 2/5 again. And 5/20 we can cancel down by dividing by 5, which gives you 1/4. So the 2 that cancelled down to 2/5 were the 10/25 and the 4/10. For part B, we have to shade 25% of the figure. 25% is a quarter, and a quarter of the figure would be 2 of the sections. For part C, we have to say what fraction of the shape is shaded, given our answer in its simplest form. We start by counting up the shaded sections. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then we count up the number of sections we've got overall. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. We now have to cancel it to its simplest form. So we've got to find the biggest number that we can divide 6 and 15 by, which would be 3. And when we divide the top and the bottom by 3, that gives us 2 on the top and 5 on the bottom. Question 6, Dean thinks of a number, he multiplies it by 4 and subtracts 12. The answer he gets is 20. We've got to say what number Dean thinks of. If we've got to find the number he originally thought of, then we need to work the problem backwards. And when we work it backwards, we do it in the opposite order and we use the opposite operation. So if we ended up with 20, we start with 20. The final thing he did was subtract 12, so we need to add 12, which will give us 32. Then, prior to that, he multiplied the number by 4, so we need to do the opposite of that. We need to divide the number by 4, and that gives us the final answer 8. For part B, we've got to solve the equation, which means we need to get the letter on its own on the left-hand side. So the -7 needs to go over to the other side. And when it does go over to the other side, we do the opposite, which means we add 7. 4 add 7 is 11, so that's your value of x. For part C, the packages A and B balance as shown in the diagrams below. So A must be the same weight as B plus 8 as they balance. And in the second scales, A must be the same weight as 3 lots of B because they balance. So A is equal to B plus 8 and A must be equal to 3 lots of B as they balance. Now we have to find the numbers or the values, the weights rather, for A and B that'll make these equations work. The only values that will work are if A weighs 12 kilograms and B weighs 4 kilograms. Because if A is 12, 3 lots of B, if B is 4, 3 lots of 4 will be 12, and A is 12, so they balance. If B is 4, 4 plus 8 will become 12, which again is equal to A, so those values work. For number 7, we have to describe in words the rule for continuing the sequence. To go from 2 to 8 to 32 to 128, we have to multiply by 4. For part B, the rule connecting t and v is t equals 75 minus 6v. We've got to find the value of t when v is 8. That means we have to swap v with 8. When a number and a letter are next to each other, we've got to multiply them. So that substitution becomes t equals 75 minus 6 times 8. 6 eighths then are 48. So we have to do 75, take away 48, which is 27. For part C, petrol costs X pounds per litre. We've got to write down in terms of X the cost of 45 litres. If every litre costs X pound per litre and we have 45 of them, we need to do 45 times X. And in algebra, we can write them next to each other and that'll mean times. For part 2, the car is Y years old, another car is 3 years older. We've got to write down, in terms of Y, the age of the younger car. So if we start with a car that is Y years old and another car is 3 years younger, we need to take 3 away. For part D, to find 2/7 of 28, the rule here is to divide by the bottom number in the fraction and to times by the top number in the fraction. So we do 28 divided by 7 and then we times our answer by 2. 28 divided by 7 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. For part E, Wendy earns £1,200 in her part-time job. She receives a pay rise of 4%. How much is the pay rise? Again, we use the calculator method for finding 4% of 1,200. Divide 4% by 100 to convert it into a decimal, which will be 0.04. And then we multiply that by 1,200. When you type that into your calculator, you'll get £48.